Welcome back to Movies Recap. Please like the video and interact with it to support the channel to continue to provide this content. Thank you so much. Tim Lake starts by describing who he is and who his family is. He was too tall, too skinny, and too orange all the time. Usually, his mother was not sentimental. James, his father, is a former university professor who likes to read and play table tennis in his free time. His sister Catherine, sometimes known as Kit Kat, was free-spirited, and his uncle Desmond was a little weird and probably suffers from Alzheimer's. As Tim recalls, the family has spent many happy times together on the beach and at their home in Cornwall, England. Tim doesn't really enjoy going to his parents' New Year's Eve party. He and his friend Jay awkwardly bump into a table, spilling beverages and bottles all over the place, including on some of the other attendees. While Tim is being courted by a lovely young blonde woman, Kit Kat hooks up with Jimmy Kincaid. Tim moves in to kiss the woman as they all count down to midnight. But instead he shakes her hand and wishes her a happy new year. Everyone else is kissing their significant others while the woman is seen seeming disappointed. Tim and his father have a meeting in the family's den the following morning. James shares with him an important family secret that his own father revealed to him when he was 21 years old. It appears that the family's men have the capacity to travel through time. Tim is confused and doubts what his father just said, yet he asks questions as to how this work is carried out. James tells him to find himself there by entering a dark space, closing his eyes, clenching his fists, and imagining the precise moment he wishes to travel to. Of course, he continues, his time travel is limited because he can only visit specific times in his own life. Tim takes this attempt by going into his bedroom's wardrobe. He follows James' advice, and as quickly as Mr. Brightside by the Killers starts playing loudly, he is startled to realize that he is still wearing the same clothing as he had for the New Year's Eve celebration. When the clock strikes midnight, he avoids bumping into the table and grabs the blonde woman, much to her surprise, kissing her. Tim travels back in time to tell his father how amazed he is. Tim responds that he would really like to use this power to get a woman when the man asks him what he wants to do with it. Summertime rolls around and Kit Kat's friend Charlotte arrives to stay with the family, and Tim is instantly smitten with her. While she and Kit Kat are sunbathing, Charlotte asks Tim to rub sunscreen on her back. He jumps with excitement at the request, and as he tries to squeeze the tube, he squirts a big load of sunscreen on Charlotte's back. Tim awkwardly runs away into the house and into the closet to go back to this moment. He now acts more laid back and suave, then gently applies sunscreen to Charlotte's back. Tim visits Charlotte's room the night before her last day with the family to ask her a question. She warns him not to bring up the subject of love before speaking because, despite Kit Kat's claim to the contrary, that is exactly what he was planning to do. Despite the fact that Charlotte thinks he's cute, she advises him to try his luck soon instead of waiting until her last night. This drives him to enter the closet next to her room and time travel a month to the middle of her stay in order to make a move. More intrigued now, Charlotte advises them to hold off until her final night to gauge her mood. Tim eventually realizes that no matter how much he travels back in time, he cannot make Charlotte fall in love with him, and so she leaves him with a broken heart. Tim moved to London to further his legal career after the summer is over. He moves in with a family friend named Harry Chapman, a grouchy playwright. After that, he begins working at a legal company where he meets a young man by the name of Rory who spends a lot of time close to Tim while he continues looking for a girlfriend. One evening, Jay takes Tim to a restaurant where they are paired up with blind dates in a dark room. While Jay is with her friend Joanna, Tim spends the evening talking to a girl named Mary who has an American accent. Tim and Mary get along well, but Joanna doesn't seem to care much about Jay. Tim is attracted by Mary's beauty, despite the fact that she doesn't think of herself as very beautiful. When the boys and ladies first meet, Tim seems to be a fan of her outfit and hairstyle. Tim is able to get Mary's phone number before she and Joanna leave. When Tim gets home, Harry is upset because one of his actors forgot their lines during a performance of his play. This inspires Tim to start the evening again so he can take Harry to the play and lift his feelings. Tim encourages one of the key performers to read his script in his dressing room. Tim is brutally punished by the actor, who then reads his script. Tim and Harry watch the play, and the audience applaud when the actor reads his lines perfectly. It turns out that another actor completely freezes on stage, which is a shame. Tim leaves to go back in time and go backstage to hold up cue cards for the actor to look to, which allows him to recite his lines perfectly and also receive applause. After the show, Tim goes to call Mary, only to see her number isn't listed in his phone. He rushes to the restaurant where they met and is told by the host that Mary and Joanna had already left. And since they paid in cash, he can't give Tim any more information. The following morning, when Harry examines the newspaper, he discovers a positive review of his performance. However, Tim is more interested in an advertisement showing Kate Moss since he and Mary chatted about her when they first met. This leads him to visit a museum with a Kate Moss picture show in the hopes of seeing Mary there. He tries for days on end with no success before Kit Kat stops by to assist him. When Mary finally passes by, Tim takes the chance to speak with her. She responds that they have never met, with his greetings to her that it is lovely to meet her. He claims to be aware of her name as Mary, but this only causes her a little pain. He leaves feeling rather ashamed. But Kit Kat convinces him to go back, just as Joanna arrives. Tim convinces Mary to let him tag along as long as he assures her he's not a lunatic or an odd fringe fetishist. He joins them for lunch and learns that Mary has a boyfriend. Said boyfriend, Rupert, arrives to join the girls. Tim starts asking pressing questions about how they met and where, which happens to be at a party Joanna threw the previous week at her flat. She even gives Tim the specific address to the place, which is enough information for Tim to run into the men's room to time travel again. Tim arrives at Joanna's party just in time to see Mary alone at a table by the window. He begins a conversation with her, which initially comes off as awkward, but he eventually convinces her to leave the party so they may have dinner together, keeping Mary from ever seeing Rupert. Tim discovers that Mary works for a book publisher during their date, and they continue to talk about Kate Moss. Tim takes Mary home after dinner, where they share their first kiss. She invites him inside for some sex, which the first time doesn't go well. Tim goes back in time to try again. And this time it works out better, but he still tries again, this time with greater confidence, making Mary and himself very happy in the process. Tim and Mary begin dating officially, spending months together at the train station as a musical ensemble performs a love song during their montage of love. One day Mary's parents from the United States arrive to visit, but she suddenly announces it to Tim as they approach their apartment. She warns him not to bring up their intimacy because her parents are very traditional. When they get to the door, Tim blunderingly says that they don't do oral sex. Naturally, he enters a neighboring closet, travels back in time to fix this, and then sits down to dinner with Mary's parents. As a result, Mary admits her love for Tim. Tim notices Charlotte and her friend Tina at a performance he and Rory are watching one evening. Tim approaches Charlotte after the play, and she introduces Tina as her girlfriend. While she claims that's not the kind of girlfriend she meant, Tim gets the impression that she rejected him because he thinks she's a lesbian from hearing this. When it turns out that Tina is actually gay, but she is not Charlotte's lover, he returns to fix this. However, he continues to make a mistake remark about using the term girlfriend to trick someone into believing she is gay. To fix this, Tim travels through time 3 times, but this time he chooses not to approach Charlotte. However, Charlotte happens to spot him as he is leaving with Rory. She chats him up and then goes to have dinner with Tina, only to come back moments later to invite Tim to join her while she ditches Tina. The two have dinner and then go back to her place. Charlotte begins to invite him in, but Tim sees where this is going and he tells her there is something he needs to do. Mary is sleeping when Tim returns to his apartment. She is too sleepy and half asleep to respond when he wakes her to propose to her. He travels across time to hire a jazz band to play music and ask her to marry him in a more sensitive style. She accepts and expresses appreciation that he did not make a huge public proposal. To tell the news to Tim's family, Tim and Mary pay them a visit. When Kit Kat is found, she informs him that she has been fired from another job. She rushes into the living room, takes Mary by the cheek, and kisses her repeatedly. Tim tells the family during dinner that he and Mary are getting married and that they hope to do so soon because they are also expecting a baby. The news has shocked the entire family. Tim and Mary begin making decisions that evening, including the use of the song El Mondo at the wedding, the location of the wedding, Tim's best man, and the location of their honeymoon. The wedding day finally comes. Even when it starts to rain, the couple finds everything to be enjoyable and amusing. Rory, who is the best man at the reception, begins to make a bad speech, which causes Tim to go back in time and choose Harry as his best man. Tim returns to choosing Jay as Harry starts making lewd comments to him. The fact that Jay begins using crass sexual references makes this situation much worse, forcing Tim to choose his dad as the best man in the end. After giving a bad speech, James chooses to go back in time to deliver a far better speech in which he declares that he has only ever loved Uncle Desmond, B.B. King, and Tim. Mary soon gives birth to Posey, a girl who will be her and Tim's first child. Even though Tim says they can hardly afford it, they finally move into their own home, and he and Mary are happy with this. Tim's family shows up on Posey's first birthday a year later, but they are still waiting for Kit Kat. Jimmy Kincaid opens the door once there is a knock. When Tim wants to know about Kit Kat, Jimmy replies that they had a fight and that she had been drinking earlier. When Tim and Mary arrive at the hospital, they learn that Kit Kat was involved in a crash as a result of her drunk driving. Tim time travels to bring Kit Kat to his house before she drives anywhere. He takes her for a walk on the beach to confront her over her problems with Jimmy. She is just as surprised to find herself in her old clothes as Tim was at the beginning. Tim holds Kit Kat away from walking to Jimmy, and they see him approach another girl. Kit Kat realizes what a jerk Jimmy is, and she goes over to him to punch him square in the face. Kit Kat tells Tim that she is now with Jay because her memory has been changed when Tim takes her back to the present. Tim returns home after being happy to see Kit Kat happier with Jay. He is shocked to see that his daughter is now a male when he goes to play with Posey. To meet the child's father, Tim goes back in time to the day of the child's birth. James explains to his son that he changed the timeline so that he had a son instead of Kit Kat because the child was born between Tim and Kit Kat's time travel with Kit Kat. Tim understands he must reverse Kit Kat's changed timeline in order for Posey to be born. Tim and Mary remain by Kit Kat's bedside as she recovers from the car accident until she makes an effort to end her relationship with Jimmy and keep her work. Tim tells Kit Kat that Jay has always had feelings for her and advises her to talk to him before he leaves. Sure enough, Posey is still there, and Tim plays with his daughter. He tells Mary he wants another child, though Mary doesn't want to go through the process again. Despite this, they have another baby, this time a boy named Jeff. Tim and Mary are having dinner with Mary's publisher one evening. Because although Tim tells her that she looks beautiful in any outfit, she goes through a number of clothing changes since she is unhappy with the way she looks. Mary finally returns to the original outfit she dressed. Tim replies when she asks him where Posey is that he left her downstairs. He sadly left her with the publisher's manuscript, which Posey colored in with crayon before destroying it. Tim tries to leave so he can use time travel to fix this, but Mary is angry and won't let him. The phone then rings and she answers angrily, then apologizes when she finds out it's Tim's mother. She passes the phone to him and Tim's face becomes worried when he speaks to his mother. Kit Kat follows Tim and Mary back to the family's Cornwall home. Tim asks his mother how she is as Kit Kat arrives crying. "I am totally disinterested in a life without your father," she replies. Tim is informed by Uncle Desmond that James has lung cancer. He continues by saying that the day James offered to Desmond on Tim's wedding day was the best day of his life, and now learning of this news makes this the worst day. When Tim sees his father, he finds out that he only has a few weeks left. He confesses that he has been time traveling sometimes in order to give himself more free time to study books and spend time with his family. He then tells Tim he has another secret to tell him. Tim describes how his father offered him a two-part strategy for living life to the fullest. We see Tim going to work, watching Rory get punished by their employer, going to a court case with Rory that ends up being successful, and experiencing the day with the stresses he should meet in the first section. The second step involves traveling back in time and reliving the day while accepting it as it is. He recalls that day with a happier mood, even letting Rory take pleasure in it. The day comes for James's funeral. While everybody is getting ready, Tim time travels to a moment with his father, letting him know that he is arriving from the funeral. He sits down with James to listen to him read a passage from a Charles Dickens novel. After the funeral, Mary informs Tim that she wants to have a third kid. She thinks to this child as the insurance baby because, in the event that one of their children shows to be intelligent and the other is not, there will be two happy dummies instead of one unhappy one, she adds. Tim is in favor of the idea, despite the fact that he is clear that doing so would require him to cut the ties with his father. Tim time travels to see his father every day for the next 9 months while Mary is expecting their third child. On the 9th month, just as Mary is about to give birth, Tim pays his father one more visit. James asks questions about the right form of payment after their play of table tennis. Tim says he will give him a kiss, and from the look on his face, James is able to determine what this means. Tim goes over to give his father a kiss, and then the two go into a dark place to time travel together to a day when Tim was a child. He and his father spend the day together at the beach. A girl named Jo, Tim and Mary's third child, is born. Both Kit Kat and Jay are married and have children of their own. Tim has come to the conclusion that he can now live his life normally without the use of time travel since everything is wonderful the way it is. He kisses Mary as she falls asleep before leaving to drop his slightly older children off at school. A short montage showing the majority of the other characters, Rory, Harry, Tim's mother, Kit Kat, Joanna, etc., enjoying their lives, one day at a time, marks the end of the movie.